Now, Margaret Thatcher's time as leader of the UK back in the 1980s was famously controversial, as we all know. And now a new film explores that polarising time by looking very closely at her life story.
It's called The Iron Lady, and it charts her journey from hopeful junior politician to Prime Minister to her later life as an ageing recluse. Our Europe correspondent Philip Williams reports from the red carpet in London.
Welcome to the premiere of The Iron Lady, and all the talk here in London is about Meryl Streep's performance as Margaret Thatcher. Before we go any further, let's have a little look how she pulled that off.
Right Honourable Lady, the Secretary of State for Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Right Honourable Gentleman knows very well that we had no choice but to close the school. Because his union paymasters have called a strike deliberately to cripple our economy. Teachers cannot teach when there is no heating, no lighting in their classrooms. And I ask the Right Honourable Gentleman, whose fault is that?
Of course, it's not just about Margaret Thatcher in her heyday as Prime Minister. One of the most controversial figures, of course, in British history. It's also about her later years in decline, where she hallucinates about seeing her husband, who died some years before.
Lovely little article in the Telegraph. The woman who changed the face of history.
Yeah.
Yes, 2 years ago, the Prime Minister quoted St. Francis. Yes, and talked about bringing faith, hope and harmony to this country.
Denis?
So, what was it like playing Denis Thatcher? Well, Jim Broadbent was the man for the job. Here's a little of what he said, describing playing one of the perhaps most derided figures in recent British political history, the man seen as the handbag at the time, but on reflection, history has given him a kinder place.
He was deliberately and very wisely kept his cards close to his chest, and his line was, "It's better to keep your mouth shut and be thought a fool than open it and remove all doubt," which is a great line which reveals his intelligence and his wit.
Milk's gone up. 49p a pint.
Good grief. You'll have to economise. Suppose we could always sell the car. Or take in paying guests.
I developed my version of how he spoke and looked and how he was and how he moved and all that. I developed my version of that, and then that was what I dropped into whichever fantasy sequence or biopic sequence was necessary. So, I mean, hopefully the character was consistent in whichever scene he was required to be in. But the normal rules of developing a character and finding his motivation and following it through to the end of the scene didn't apply.
I will never be one of those women, Denis, who stays silent and pretty on the arm of her husband, or remote and alone in the kitchen, doing the washing up for that matter.
We'll get to help with that.
No. One's life must matter, Denis. Beyond all the cooking and the cleaning and the children, one's life must mean more than that. I cannot die washing up a teacup. I mean it, Denis. Say you understand.
Now, there is a particular style to the direction of this movie. It cuts between the past, the present and in between. I spoke to Phillida Lloyd about what she was trying to achieve.
It's a film about power and loss of power. And in some ways, her life is sort of our lives writ large. It's just that she's had this mighty life and huge power, and now she has none. And so it's the journey, that we're all going to go on in terms of the cost of the decisions we make, and will we at the end of it all think, was it worth it? Who suffered? you know, what were the losses?
No, yes, we have always lived alongside evil, but it has never been so patient, so avid for carnage, so eager to carry innocence along with it into oblivion.
So, Margaret.
Western civilization must root out this evil wherever it hides, or she risks defeat at the hands of global terror in a nuclear age unimaginable.
Prime Minister made a very good statement, I thought.
Yes, clever man. Quite a smoothie.
There have only been two ways of looking at her for 30 years in this country. Blessed Margaret, Saint Margaret, who wrestled Britain out of its post-war decline, put us back on the global stage, unleashed the free market, or the monster she-devil who ruined the lives of millions and bred a culture of pure greed. Now, there's that one and there's that one. And that's been churning round or sort of stuck in this kind of aspic, literally, for 30 years. The question is there another person in here, perhaps a little more like you and me, who's actually a human being, which of course is controversial to one side to even suggest that this person is human, whose strengths, her conviction, her willpower, her courage, actually become her fatal flaws.
Watch your actions, for they become habits. Watch your habits, for they become your character. And watch your character, for it becomes your destiny. What we think we become. My father always said that. And I think I am fine.
Even though for many young people she's a figure from the past, I think this movie could appeal to a very broad audience, young and old. And it's a very poignant one. It's not just about politics. It's not even just about Maggie Thatcher. It's also about the loneliness and the isolation of old age. I think it's an incredible film. Meryl Streep's performance is amazing, well worth seeing.
Philip Williams's recommendation, and you saw a taste of just that brilliant performance from Meryl Streep. Just
spookily eerie, similar to Margaret Thatcher's presentation, her voice, even the look in her face.
Absolutely, just extraordinary. And for more on the Iron Lady, we also have, well, Philip Williams actually got an exclusive interview with Meryl Streep, and that'll be aired tonight on 7:30, so look out for that.